If you don't mind, Robert, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I am Robert Worthline. I'm here today really on two fronts. One, I'm the state director for behavioral health in Colorado. But the second is I'm a person who's lived my entire life with chronic depression. And I'm really excited to have this today because we often talk about the people that we've failed, or we talk about areas where we have to get better. We don't often talk about there are lots of people who are successfully managing their mental health or substance use addiction. And I want to give hope to those that are maybe first time experiencing their mental health or substance use addiction, and give them hope that you can have a successful life and you can have a happy life and still manage those things that never they don't totally always they never really all go away, but you can manage to them and have a good life. So.
And you are living proof of that, Robert, that you are absolutely a great example of exactly what you just said. So thank you so much for being with us today. Next, we have Laura Negley. And because we are in the middle of the pandemic still, we're having to deal with some Zoom issues. So unfortunately, you can't see her wonderful face right now, but you're going to hear her words of wisdom. Laura, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yes, hello. I am from Eads, Colorado, which is in southeastern part of the state, Kiowa County, and I and my husband and son run and operate a farming and ranching operation. And I'm also involved with the Colorado Farm Bureau, Farm Safety and Health Committee. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door promoting mental health issues in rural Colorado. On a personal note, I went through a period of depression and anxiety back in 2012, but I'm happy to say that even though that was a dark time in my life, there is light, as they say, at the end of the tunnel. And I'm doing very well today, and I want to offer hope and encouragement to others who might find themselves struggling.
Absolutely, Laura. Thank you so much for being with us today. And you guys probably already know this face from 9 News years ago, and then we've talked to her plenty of times since then. Dana Knowles is with us this morning, going to be talking about more along the aspects of addiction and how that's tied to mental health. And so, Dana, thank you so much for being with us. If you don't mind at this time, going ahead and introducing yourself.
Yeah, my name is Dana Knowles, and I was with 9 News years ago. Don't age me, Jordan. But yes, I'm here to say that we can survive all these things and thrive. I am a survivor of childhood trauma. I had eating disorders in my 20s. I suffered from an addiction to opiate painkillers after hip surgery. I was addicted to alcohol, and I don't know. I consider myself much more than a survivor. I definitely consider myself thriving after dealing with a lot of these issues. And I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to be here, and I live in Denver.
Perfect. I'm excited to have all of y'all here. And the first question I just kind of want to open up to you guys, because a lot of people ask me this because I think they hear us talk about it so much, and they sit here and say, why do you talk so frequently about mental health? Why is that an important conversation to keep having? And before I kind of weigh in on what I think, I want to open that up to you. And again, Robert, let's just start with you. Why is it important that we're even taking an hour out of people's day right now to address this, to address the struggles that a lot of people are facing right now?
Yeah, I just think it's important. Well, we'll start with, 1 in 5 Coloradans have a mental health or substance use concern that needs to be addressed. So that's a lot. That's a lot of Coloradans. We know not all those Coloradans are out getting the services and the help that they need, and I really hope that people hear this and realize that it's not doom and gloom. If we take the steps to get help, you can thrive, as Dana mentioned. It's possible. It's really possible. And I'm really trying to debunk that whole pull yourself up by your own bootstraps notion. We don't do that in healthcare. We should not be doing that in behavioral health. It's such an antiquated term. It's okay to ask a professional or anyone for say, hey, help me out with this. And I'm really hoping that people get the courage to be able to do that.
And we're actually going to talk about some resources a little bit later on in this hour for people that are going to be hearing this that are saying, well, how do I get started on that? So stay tuned if that's something that you're interested and learning a little bit more about. Laura, you're in a really unique situation, like you talked about. You're more in rural Colorado, where we know that these problems and these struggles persist, but they may not have as much access, or they're not hearing these conversations as frequently. So for you, why is it important that right now we're talking about this?
Well, to be honest, it's kind of a cultural thing that we tend to see in the more rural areas that trend heavily toward, like, perhaps the traditional agricultural industries. It's very difficult for people to seek help because they've just been raised with a mindset that when the tough gets going, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and you just slog through it, you power through it. And we're very independent here. We're very used to taking care of things. We had a tornado in Holly, Colorado a few years back. We weren't waiting for FEMA to show up. We, as everyone, got together, FFA kids, 4-Hers, community members, and we went over and we helped out. And so it's really hard for us to ask for help, and myself included. And so having gone through this period in my life, I've realized that even though I had heard about mental health, should have known the warning signs, I ignored them. And I'm hoping that perhaps in sharing my experience, that I can help get the stigma kind of removed from the ask, and so that people will get the help before they get to a crisis.
Yeah, I love that. And Dana, you actually have done this plenty of times, even on the 9 News airwaves. You're a really good example of this, of sharing your own story, at trying to chip away at that stigma, especially when it comes to the struggle with addiction. Kind of when you have these conversations, when you put yourself out there like that, what are some of the results that you see, and what are things you're hearing from people who reach out to you?
It's interesting. The main reason why I decided to be open about it is it's exhausting to kind of hold all this stuff in after a while. And holding it in sort of continues to perpetuate behaviors that don't support a healthy lifestyle. And I noticed that the more I decided to express myself, the more power was taken away from all of these things, from the eating disorders, from the addiction. And it dissipates a lot of the shame that accumulates. And I don't, I hesitate to use the word normalize, but I do use the word normalized so that people can see, hey, if it got that bad with her, and it's not that bad with me yet, maybe I can reach out and get help now. And that's what I've noticed a lot. And just sort of speaking out and doing interviews and public speaking and things like that, people will reach out to me over social media about themselves or a family member. And sometimes they'll ask for my advice, or sometimes they just want somebody to listen. And that helps them make them feel a lot better in the moment. So, yeah.
And I love that you mentioned that. It's just such a liberating feeling to kind of get a lot of that out. And that's actually a really frequent question that we were getting is, I'm in the middle of these struggles. I'm in the middle of something really terrible right now. I'm afraid I'm going to be judged for this. First of all, I hope everybody that is hearing this right now, you're hearing us talk about this, and we're not being judged at all. In fact, I think a lot of times people within our own families, our friends, our communities, they come to us because they know they can trust us because we've, faced something similar, and they celebrate us talking about this a little bit more. So I do hope that that's something people will take away from that. But one of the questions that stems from that is they're saying, how do I get started? If I'm struggling with this, how do I get started reaching out? How do I post this to my parents or to my friends or to my bosses that I'm in the middle of something really hard? And Robert, I want to again start with you on that one.
Yeah, I want to say that I have to thank Dana, because I'm new at this, at sort of sharing. I'm not a very shareable person. I don't talk about myself, and I don't like talking about myself. And it's only a couple months now that I've been talking publicly about my chronic depression. Mainly because of the courage that Dana and others and the Lift the Label work and helping others that she's been doing to get her story out there. And I felt like a hypocrite, and I was like, okay, I need to put myself out there. And how to get started, the thing I found is that nobody, all the people that love me weren't surprised hi Laura, weren't surprised when I shared it with them. They knew something that I was struggling. They knew something was off, and actually, it made our relationship better because it gave it more context. It gave them an understanding of, when I'm depressed, I'm not the best to be around. I'm cranky. I'm just doom and gloom. And for people in my life, that helps them say, oh, it's not me. He's actually going through something. He's not responding to me, right? Which makes their lives easier. Because if you don't talk about it, people walk around like, is it me or is it him? Well, no, it was my depression that I was bringing to that relationship. It didn't have to do with the other person in my relationship with them. And I actually found it made my relationship stronger and better. And I still am adjusting to getting comfortable in the sense that I don't like that kind of attention. I'm not comfortable with it, but it's made my relationships better.
Well, thank you. And you really are good at sharing. I know you're just getting started, but I could listen to you all day long. Laura, friend, it's good to see your face. Very happy to see you now.
And I can figure the technology out. So
you know what? That's just kind of what happens when we're on Zoom. Sometimes it's just gonna be a thing we have to deal with. But same question to you. How did you get started talking about it? And I imagine it probably wasn't very easy when you first, realized that you were in the middle of this.
it still isn't easy. I'll be honest. I have a big set of nerves going on right now. And again, as what Robert said, family and friends, when they notice a change in a person's behavior, specifically a big change, that is an indication that something's going on. And with me, I'm a chatty Cathy. Okay. So I like to check in on family. I like to call my parents daily. I like to check in with my siblings, my kids, friends, and just, check in on them, see how they're doing. And when I went silent, that was the first time that had ever happened. And one of my very good friends actually got so worried because I wasn't returning phone calls or text messages or anything like that. He actually called my daughter, who was in college at the time, and they said, hey, what's going on with your mom? And I had hidden it from them because both my children, son and daughter, were in college. They weren't living at home. And so they weren't aware I was going through this. And they probably were, I made the effort to talk to the kids. That was like my line, my safety. And so they weren't even aware of it. So I tell people, I said, I know it might kind of annoy you a little bit because I'm always chatting, but when I go quiet, then you really need to get worried. And so keeping an eye out on people and having they're not taking care of things like they normally do. There's a lot of things that Robert can probably specifically address more from his point of view. A few years back, when Don Brown was commissioner of Colorado Department of Ag, he realized that there's some real issues with rural Colorado and mental health and people being able to seek and actually want to get help, struggling and not getting the help before they got to crisis. And so he created a coalition. He worked with Colorado Farm Bureau, Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, CSU, Colorado Department of Ag, and a few others to try and find a way that we could do something. And they kind of focused on a crisis intervention line, a phone center, mainly training those individuals who would take the calls to basically understand the language and the culture of those of us calling in from rural Colorado, because it's different. And if we don't feel like you understand our story, it's really hard to talk in the first place, but then it's really hard to continue the conversation if we don't feel you understand where we're coming from. And so that's kind of where my foot in the door came from, was through my involvement with the Colorado Farm Bureau Farm and Safety Committee, and just Health and Safety Committee, to try and make sure that the word got out there and could help others. Because if my story can get others to get help early, that's what I want them to do, not wait until they're in a suicidal point where they're, got a gun to their head. So.
Well, thank you for your courage of even just sharing. We're getting very personal, and so I appreciate the strength that it takes to be able to share that. And Laura, you're definitely a light in so many people's lives. And Dana, you have used your platform for so many years. Was it ever hard for you? When did I can't even imagine, you were struggling to talk about this, but I do know that there was a time when you probably had a hard time.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's yes, it's my whole story. It's chaos and pain. And I mean, I was in treatment 3 times in 2 years, and, you know, but again, a lot of it, I started talking about my struggles for selfish reasons. Initially not to help other people, but because I'm thinking I can't hold on to this. And I didn't like, in our neighborhood, some people knew, some people didn't, some of our family members knew, some didn't. And I just sort of got to the point the last time I was in treatment where I was like, I can't do this. It's too much to manage. And my feeling was, if some people decide they're afraid of me, or they don't like me, or they don't want to be around me because of these struggles, as extreme as they are, then fine, then they can make that decision. But I have to own my experiences, and I have to own what I've been through. And then it sort of manifested into me doing it because I saw the response that I would get from other people, and knowing that, hey, this person messaged me over social media and he's going to get help for his wife. This person messaged me, or this person called me and said she's going to get help for her son. We have people in our neighborhood who are going through issues right now because of COVID lockdown and substance use. So I have people reaching out to me for that. And if nothing else, for them to understand that, I think struggling on any level, even without everything that, our nation has been through in the last year because of this pandemic, even without all of that, it is normal to have struggles no matter what your background is. But then when you add all of the things that we've been going through on top of what normal struggles are, it's all okay. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to feel your feelings and process your feelings. And as a result of that, it's okay to ask for help if you don't understand the feelings that you're feeling. That's my big thing. I go through this with my kids right now. 2 of them, because they were only recently allowed to start going back to school in person. It was a real struggle for them. So we were able to find some telehealth therapy for 3 of them, and 1 of them is still going or attending once a week. So yeah, I kind of went on a tangent there, but I feel like
Glad
there's so
you
many
did.
different layers to this. So anyway.
Yeah, glad you did. That was a lot of great things said. And I want to stick with you really quickly for this next question, because along those same lines and almost from the opposite direction, though, one of the questions that we're getting, and this specifically was from a viewer that wrote in that said they have somebody in their life that is struggling with addiction and they don't know how to address this with their friend. They're nervous to bring this topic up because they want to help, they want to be there, but they feel they might be a little insensitive by doing it. Is there a right way and for somebody to approach this topic with someone they love and they care? Because we know that's definitely, people are watching, trying to get people in their lives that they love some help.
I don't know if there's one right way for everybody because everybody's different. I think that addiction is a spectrum. I'm more of a new thinker when it comes to addiction. I don't think it's all or nothing. I think there's a lot of gray area in between the person who drinks for social anxiety, and then that's one end of the spectrum. And then me, the point that I got to, I think that's the other end of the spectrum. I think that depending on what phase a person is in on this spectrum depends on the approach. I have a friend whose husband has relapsed, and she basically had to set a boundary with him. And she had to ask him to leave the house. So that's one end. And she felt like that was the right thing to do for herself and her kids. And that's what my husband did with me. I got kicked out of my house. He was like, we're not doing this anymore. And it worked for me ultimately, as angry as I was, but it ended up working for me and it worked for our family. I think it's okay, obviously, to bring these concerns up if you see something, but for someone who is active in addiction, chances are they may not say, oh, you know what? Okay, you're right. I'm going to go get help. And that's what's so unfortunate. That's what's really unfortunate about it. I think it depends on the approach. I think it depends on where they are on the spectrum. So it's kind of hard to answer that question. From a personal perspective, I feel like I'd need more information before I'd be able to kind of dispense advice. Robert might be able to offer a little bit more specific information than me.
Dana's the new moderator. So Robert, you take it over.
Dana's right. I mean, don't expect that it's going to be oh, thank you so much. That may not be the outcome, but at the very least, what you've done is planted a seed that you care. And make sure that you're approaching it from I want to help this person, no matter how they respond. It's not about me. So I want to approach from I care about you. That's why I'm bringing this up. I'm not judging you, right? Don't come from a judging standpoint. Don't start calling out, at least without, from an intervention standpoint, maybe, but from a one-on-one, letting someone know you care. Don't go into a judgmental, judging the behaviors, judging what they've done. But just start from a point of, I care about you. I'm concerned about you. If I didn't, I wouldn't be bringing this up. Start there, and they may not respond well. They may call you names and say, get away from me, because they're not ready to deal with that. But you planted that seed that you're there and that you do care, which is a really powerful thing for people who are going through a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura, do you have anything you'd like to add to that question?
I think, yes, you have to make that initial reach out to the person. I think what Robert said, it's true. You have to go according to how they respond, and they may not want to hear it the first time. And so even if you're rebuffed the first time, don't be pushy and in your face, but still keep in touch and just let that person know by your actions that you still care. Even if it's just, hey, how are you doing today? And you know, the person's probably not going to really share with you how they're really doing, but they know that you're trying. And because that is important, you need to have the community to help you heal. And you need to know that you have that support. And things are better now than they were in 12, but there really weren't any counselors in this area that you could easily go to. And my brother, who had also suffered with a bout of depression one time, he just basically did an intervention. He says, we're going to get you into therapy. And we're going to get you into therapy. And it worked out because it was during the off season. I didn't have cattle I had to take care of. And I went up to where they live, which is in the Negley area. And I spent 6 weeks up there, and I got really good therapy with a counselor that really helped me get over the hump. And and then, as I said, a friend who called my daughter. And then, of course, when my daughter called me and said, why is Monty calling me? And then it was like, okay, this is getting really bad. If I've got friends calling family and that concerned about me, is kind of, okay, maybe I need to do something about this. It's starting to affect others. I can't keep it a secret from my kids anymore. And then my husband was totally ill prepared to deal with it. He didn't know how to handle it. And he was struggling, and he's not one who has an easy time with discussing these kinds of things. And he just was like, well, you're broke. You need to fix yourself. And I was like, thanks. That's a lot of help. I know that. But that was his way of showing his concern. He didn't know how else to show it. And it was kind of insensitive, but it's like, okay, yes, it was kind of a little bit of a kick in the pants. But then even when you're in the midst of it, sometimes you just don't have the energy. It just seems so overwhelming, and you need help, but it's just, how do you take that first step? Because it's a struggle, and each day you have to fight yourself to go out the door. I stayed in the home for 3 months. I didn't walk out of my house unless I absolutely had to, and then I'd break into a panic attack and have fierce sweat, and I just, I didn't want to leave the house, and just forcing myself to go out the house. Driving was another big trigger for me. All the things that could go wrong when you get in a vehicle, even, and I had that fear of being able to drive and get on the road. And interestingly enough, if I drove, I did better than if I was a passenger. I don't know why. Maybe I felt I was a little more in control of things, and therefore, so a lot of these things that you have to address and acknowledge, but friends and family, do be patient with those of us who are going through it, because it's hard for us sometimes to seek help and accept help.
And look at you now, you're thriving, and you're learning how to manage it. I want to stay with you, Laura, on this one, because now I want to talk a little bit about some coping strategies and ways that people can kind of, just small things they can do to manage, maybe it's depression or it's anxiety, or whatever kind of bout. And we know there's not a one size fits all kind of solution. And this is why I think it's important for us to talk about what works for us, because somewhere in there, maybe one of those tools will work for somebody else. How did you, when you were really in the thick of it, what were some things that really helped you out?
Well, okay, in a broad sense, there's like three ways of dealing with people with depression and anxiety. And one is pharmaceutical help, one is counseling help, and one's a combination of those. And Robert can speak to more of this. I personally think that people should not be afraid if they need to use some sort of pharmaceutical help, especially in the initial stages, to help you get over the hump. But truthfully, I think if you're going to have long-term maintenance and really go forward, you've got to have the counseling and interaction to help you, cognitive behavioral therapy, change the way you deal with your stressors and your triggers. And as Dana mentioned, you have to acknowledge your feelings, but I'm really pretty good about being in touch with my feelings, probably overly much. My issue was learning how to, okay, that's my feeling, it's legitimate, but I can't let it drive my actions because it's not healthy. Feeding into that feeling is pulling me down in a spiral, and it's not allowing me to come out of it. So I have to learn to train myself to behave differently when I have those stressors come into my life. So when those triggers happen, I need to be able to, acknowledge that's how I feel, but then say, okay, you can go forward. And I struggle with that still. And I still am on a low dose of a very mild medication that works well for me, mainly because when I'm stressed, I have problems with insomnia and I don't sleep well. And so that it just helps me get a little better sleep and works better for me. And it also has the side effect of having a mild antidepressive, anti-anxiety, effect. But if it's going to be one thing and you can't have, both, or don't deal with both, I'd say the therapy is to me, I think is the most important. So often I see other people who have been put on medication by well-intentioned medical providers. And oftentimes I think those in the rural communities perhaps don't have the background and training in their backgrounds to work with mental health long-term. And that's all they do is just take the medication that's been prescribed to them, and they never go further. And I think it's just like a pot at simmer, and it may help, but I don't know if it corrects the issue. It's just fixing the symptoms, not the cause that's causing the problem. So those are some of the things. Another thing that's helped me to deal with it is working with others. It's not easy to talk about, but I realize that perhaps doing this, I am a type A personality. And I like to be in control. I have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And when one doesn't work, I go to the other. And I've had to tell myself, okay, you can't always plan yourself out of something. You have to have some flexibility and have to realize that things are going to happen you don't plan for. So that's another thing I've had to learn for. But by being able to set a task for myself in which I can see a positive end result by going down that path, that helps me to deal with my situation.
Do we all have therapists on this call? Like, do all of us see a therapist? I do, and I love mine. Robert, Dana, do y'all have one as well?
I was in therapy for years and I've transitioned out.
I've transitioned out too, but he's on my speed dial. So if I ever need anything, just give me a call. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
And I was in and out of therapy for a couple decades. And right now I'm not, although, the last couple of weeks, I've been contemplating going back to therapy. I think the pandemic is finally getting to me, and just the isolation and the stress. And I want to really quickly touch on what Laura said about the meds. We can't get over how, like, if we have any other part of our body outside of our brains we're struggling with, we take medication. We should not be embarrassed to take medication to help with our brains. This is a behavioral and a physiological condition, addiction and mental health concerns. It's both. So in my life, I on and off have taken medication when I needed it to get over that hump that Laura was talking about. But the biggest thing for me in treatment was acceptance commitment therapy. When I just accepted the fact that I may live with this the rest of my life, and I am living, and I have been. but the acceptance part was really key because I kept digging myself in a hole and beating myself up for why can't I get past this? I'm like, what's wrong with me? And finally, I remember the day. I still remember the day, and it was just it was after a therapy session, and I said, I'm going to try this acceptance commitment therapy out. And I just woke up one day and I felt awful. And that's the other thing for me, like the time change this last week, it really messes with me, and like it sets my mood for the whole day. So for me, under acceptance commitment therapy, when I wake up that way, and I do wake up, I have mornings that I wake up that I just don't want to move. But I'm just like, okay, this is how I feel, but this is not going to interfere with what I'm going to do today. I'm still going to do the things I have to do today. I'm going to get up. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to do I'm not going to expect them to make me feel better, but I'm going to go through the routine. And in some ways, I'm trying to help my body trick my mind into everything's, it's eventually going to be okay. And I stopped thinking about tomorrow and the day after, because that's where I was stuck. And I just said, I'm going to be here today. I'm just going to deal with today, and I'm going to be where I am today. And I'm going to accept where I am today and work through this. When I say work through this, I mean go through the behaviors I have to do. And the other big thing for me was purpose. And I think Laura kind of touched on this, like finding what gives me purpose in life and helping people gives me purpose, but it could be on a smaller scale. My family gives me purpose. Finding that purpose and makes life more meaningful for me. But on the days that I'm not feeling good, I stopped getting into a battle with myself about why I'm not better at taking care, like why can't I fix it? And I've just gotten into is that, okay, it's just going to be one of those days. I still have things I have to do. I'm going to do those things. I'm not going to make excuses for not doing them, but I'm not going to sit there and do these things and say they're going to make me feel better. Because when they don't, I dig deeper and deeper into a depression. So I'm just going to do these things because I know I have to, and I'm going to get them done. And I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'll figure that out tomorrow. And that worked really well for me. It took a little while, but it worked really well for me, and it broke the cycle of me sort of beating myself up.
And Dana, you're a great example of someone who manages this regularly and succeeds regularly. What do? You're an inspiration just on your own.
For me, it was really a lot of trial and error. I was on medication for a while, and decided I didn't want to be on it forever. I did different modalities of therapy, which were really helpful. But for me, what I figured out was the talk therapy wasn't enough for me to release the energy that I'd been holding on to from childhood trauma. And so I transitioned from therapy to a type of meditation that basically helped me unwind the stress and the energy that I've been holding on to most of my life from that childhood trauma. And then the meditation, because I do it every day, it helps me unwind daily stress at the same time. And for me, the unwinding of the daily stress makes it so that whatever feelings I have, because I still get anxious sometimes, daylight savings, I sort of got depressed for a day afterwards. So I still have all these feelings that come up, but the meditation has made it so that I don't attach to the feelings. So I can process the feelings in real time as they come up and kind of sit with them, and then I let them go. And then the practice of not attaching them has made it so that I don't need all the other coping skills that I used to have. And so I've been able to manage really well without the medication. And let me just say about medication, I'm not on antidepressants now, but they saved my life. And I just decided at some point I didn't want to be on them forever because I'd had some side effects that after a while I decided I didn't want to deal with anymore. So, but I do want to piggyback off of what Laura was saying in terms of using medication and getting therapy. I do believe that medication should coincide directly with therapy. I think that the medication, again, fixes the symptom, but it doesn't fix the problem. And therapy can help you figure out your why. And if you can get to your why and decide like I did, I was able to figure out my why, And then I was able to make the decision, okay, I don't want to be on this anymore because I'm on some other medication for hormones. And I'm like, how much stuff do I want to be on forever? So I was able to figure out my why. And then the meditation helped me get off of the medication. But that is, for me, that's my daily maintenance. That's how I maintain my mental health, my well-being. It's how I can, be there for 3 kids. I'm trying to run a business. I have a husband who, he, ever since COVID hit, his company's been in this transition. So he's working like 12 hours a day. So he hasn't been able to be the usual support that he is for our kids. So it's basically all on me. And so me making sure that I can maintain my mental health is more crucial now than ever. But the flip side is that I have to make sure that no matter how crazy things get because of COVID, I still have to do it. I still have to do these things to take care of myself no matter what.
I'm the same way as far as the attachment goes. And actually, I use guided meditation. I use the Headspace app. I don't know if anybody has tried these apps out, but they kind of use the analogy of our happiness is always there. There's that place of peace that is always there. They describe it as that blue sky. And sometimes in the sky, clouds come and, all that. But you have to understand that blue sky is always there. If you're not getting attached to a cloud, that's just temporary. So I love that you mentioned that. Because we were talking about therapists, Robert, a question that we got, and I just want to ask you very quickly, is somebody that asked, how do we go about finding a therapist if we need one? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, if you're in a crisis, call the crisis hotline. If you just Google Colorado Crisis Hotline, you can chat, you can call. So call the hotline. I know you all are going to share that resource as well if you're in a crisis. And it's a self-defined crisis, right? So don't think that somebody is struggling worse than I am. That I therefore feel bad calling it a crisis. If you're struggling, call. They'll have a list of resources as well that they'll be able to help you get started. We're also, as a state, really recognizing we've got to get better at this. So we're really trying to work with several of our partners to get more information out there. Obviously, check with your insurance. I know that can be frustrating because everybody says they take the insurance and you call the provider and they don't take it. So that can be frustrating. But there are mental health centers throughout the state to check with to see their availability. But we're trying to get better at checking availability. And there are a lot of websites. There are a lot of apps now where private practitioners put their availability. I've been on a couple myself. Looking for someone for a family member, and they've been great. They've been these websites where these private individual providers just put on there the days that they're available and if they're taking clients or not. Then there are several different apps out there but if you just search, I need to find a mental health provider or a therapist, there are several apps out there that work really well.
I love this next question that somebody sent in. And Laura, I want to start with you, and I want to open this up to all of you because this is kind of a fun question where now you get to pat yourself on the back and celebrate your successes a little bit. We had somebody that wrote in and they asked, was there ever a time that you just didn't think you could go on? And how would you describe where you're at in life now as you manage this? Laura, when you were in the middle of everything, were you ever nervous that you weren't going to get out of that? And obviously, you seem very happy and whatnot now. How far have you come from that? And talk about a little about your successes.
I will say I never contemplated suicide, mainly because, and this is something, and touching with what was mentioned just briefly about how you maintain, and meditation was mentioned. Prayer is for me, my meditation, my faith. And there were people praying for me and I knew it. And the counselor I got was actually a pastoral counselor. And that being said, not every pastor has the ability to truly counsel someone through mental health. So even then, you need to kind of find someone who has that skill set and that talent for that. And so that really helped me out a lot. And a lot of it was, as I knew from individuals who had committed suicide in the community, how that affected the survivors, the family members. And I just did not want to do that to my family. I just couldn't. But yes, there were times I would go to bed at night and I'd say, if I don't wake up in the morning, it'd probably be best for everybody. And I'd almost like wish it, not that I would actively take my life. It's like, if I don't have to wake up in the morning and deal with this, I'll be in a better place. Everyone else will be better. off because they don't have to worry about me anymore because I'll be out of the picture. So yes, I did hit that spot. And so where I've been able to come now is I try to fill my life with things that are uplifting. Scripture helps a lot. There's a lot of things in there. My counselor did tell me, because we addressed some of my baggage, things that I'd been hanging on to, things that affected my life growing up, issues that I'd had with background in my life. And he said, do you believe that God has forgiven you for some of these things that you feel have really changed your life and were poor choices? And I said, oh yeah, 100%. I accept that. And he says, then why don't you forgive yourself? And that's what was happening. I wasn't forgiving myself. I was holding on to it. I just couldn't get past it, that I had done something that had either affected my life or someone else's life. And that was something I really, really had to learn, is that forgive yourself, make amends where you can make amends, and don't expect other people to forgive you. You have to forgive yourself. And, but then yes, repair fences. It's kind of like the AA, go out and kind of try and repair fences, but accept the fact that that's may not happen in some cases, but you still have to accept it for yourself. And so, that's kind of what helps me move forward, is just to be glad each day. And my meditation space is being out at the farm and ranch. I just love being with the cattle. My daughter's like, do you listen to podcasts when you're out there? Because she sends me these really good podcasts, and it's like, well, if I have a signal, I can get, I will listen. But sometimes I just like the peace and quiet. I don't even put Spotify on. Sometimes I do, but sometimes it's just the mindless, brainless things when you're out there fixing fence or you're doing stuff, and you just don't have to focus. You don't have to put real energy into it. You're getting a job done. And that's the other thing that's really nice, because it's physical work. And exercise is really important for mental health. And so you're out there and you're working, and then you get done. You're like, wow, I got 5 miles of fence fixed today, and so that helps too, because sometimes it's just the mindless thing. And I don't even try to think of anything. Thoughts will pop in my head and I'll kind of dwell on them a little bit, but it's just a peaceful thing. And the wildlife. I love bird song, and I love the animals. And, of course, when I'm out there, I don't want to actually see a badger in person, because they don't always appreciate you being in their net. And so when I do come across a badger hole, I just as soon not see him pop his head out. But, when you see the fox and a few coyote, and you see rabbits and all these other animals, in addition to the cows, and the calves, love this time of year because of the calves. And that helps me. That regenerates me. And I think that's true with a lot of us in ag. We have a tangible thing to show that we're doing something that which can cause us stress, but it can also be our lifesaver.
Love that. Dana, what about you?
What was the question again?
This viewer just wanted to know, if there's ever a time that you really just thought you weren't going to get out of your struggle. And looking back on it now, how far have you come, and how are you able to manage it and still be so successful?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were times in the midst of it, where I knew I couldn't stop on my own what I was doing, and I didn't want to ask for help. I just wanted to keep going. And I knew that I was slowly killing myself. I sort of turned into a shell of myself. But, I tell myself every day how far I've come. I remind myself every day that I've been able to kind of dig myself out of my own, I kind of created a living hell for myself for a few years in the midst of my addiction. And I've been able to dig myself out of that hole. And, I'm feeling emotional because I can't believe that I've been able to be such a support system for my kids in the middle of this pandemic. Our family has been fine. My husband has a great job. We have healthcare. We have resources and access to resources. And yet this has still been so tough on us, with our kids being on lockdown, not being able to go to school, not having access to the activities that normally bring them joy, and being able to connect with other kids. So I have had to literally step up my game as a mom every single day. And my husband said to me, he's like, you need to be amazed at all these things that you've been able to do with not a whole lot of help, because we can't connect and get together the way we used to be able to do. So I like to remind myself of that, but I'm also, I haven't had any cravings. The things that you would expect like an addict in recovery to deal with during a pandemic because of the stress, I'm glad that I've been able to unstress a lot of that stuff out of my body and out of my nervous system. So I don't know. I remind myself how far I've come and the work that I continue to put in every day for my kids and my family so that we can just sort of, manage all of this stuff. So, yeah.
And you're doing wonderful at it too, might I add. So I appreciate that. Robert, I know this is kind of a big topic for you that you really wanted to touch on, making sure that people know we absolutely can be successful as we live with anxiety, depression, what have you, addictions. There's a number of things that fall under mental health. For you, did you ever think that maybe you weren't going to get out of whatever your struggle was? And when you look back on it now, are you proud of yourself?
I did have bouts of suicidal ideation, and I spent a lot of time with what I call passive suicidal ideation, which was, if this car jumps this curve and comes towards me, I'm not going to move, right? If something falls, I'm not going to move, right? It's sort of hoping that something would go wrong that would give me relief through death, and I still have that feeling from time to time of just the and it is like 3 seconds where it's a thought of like, if I just died, and I feel relieved for that quick second. But then I move past it. I don't stick with it. I don't think about it. I don't dwell on it. I'm like, okay, I got to just move forward. And then 3 seconds later, it's gone like that. It's to me, it's from me feeling that way almost my entire childhood and my younger years. So it's sort of a wiring for me in my brain that's always there that I just learned not to give a whole lot of credit to. So, and I mentioned earlier on, this last couple weeks has been a struggle. So I have to do a tune-up, right? I moved away from thinking every time that I feel depressed that I'm failing again to, I just need a tune-up. I need to, do some of the things that maybe I've gotten away from. You heard about the meditation and stuff. And, for me, it's amazing what breathing can do. I mean, it's a thing we do every day, all day, but we forget, like, if we take the time to take a deep breath and just be with it, and take that deep breath. If you're ever stressed out, and I mean this for anybody, if you're ever stressed out, you stop, take a really deep breath and let go. Notice how your body feels, not how your mind, but how your body feels. It's crazy how powerful that is. And it sounds so hokey, but it's true. It really is true. So yeah, I'm happy I could be here for my family today, and that I'm contributing to hopefully making this world a better place, and how I can, and in the ways that I can. I'm really, really glad I never gave in to any of those impulses. I cannot. Oh man, I would just be. I'd be sad for the people I love. I'd be sad for me and all the things I missed out that I couldn't see because I was in such a bad place. I could not see 10 years, or even a year down the road. I couldn't see the things that I'd be grateful for later on. So I'm glad I didn't give in to those impulses.
We're glad you didn't as well. Man, I can't believe how fast an hour can go. We're almost out of time. So just really quickly, I want to give everybody one chance. If somebody is on this call, they're listening to us right now, and they may be having some of these thoughts that we've shared, that we've also had. Can we just leave them with some words of hope, some words to get them through their day? And Robert, you're nodding, so I'm going to choose you to go first if you don't mind.
Yeah. The fog passes. I like your analogy earlier. The blue sky's there. You can't always see it, but it passes, and it comes and goes, but it passes. And life is not about being happy all the time. It's about being there for each other. So I never in my million years have thought I would live days where I'm content with life, and that's an awesome thing. For years I didn't have that. So you can get there. You really can. Just put the work in and ask for help. let's say, ask for help.
Robert, I want you to call me every morning and tell me that exact same thing because even I needed to hear that today. Dana, how about you next? What words of wisdom do you have?
You're not alone. No matter how deep you are in whatever you're going through, you're not alone. I know you feel like it, but you're not. Take baby steps and make the first step asking for help, and then just keep slowly moving forward, and things will slowly start to get better, but you have to put in a little bit of work. But it can work. You can get over the hump, definitely.
And you will get over that hump too. Not just you can, but you will. You'll thrive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Love that. Laura, how about you?
It's always bad when you're the last one because everyone else says what you're going to say.
That's when you just say ditto. That's when you say all of it.
Yeah, that again, life is what you make of it. And it's how you look at it. And it's real easy for us to get caught up in the bad and the things that are stressing us. But you have to have your focus on a higher purpose, whether, and realize that your life matters to those who are closest to you, and that you are important and you have value. And that, again, like you said, it's one step at a time. I mean, I remember this little ditty that I kind of sang. It was from one of those cartoons, Christmas commercials or Christmas cartoons. And it was about Kris Kringle, and it was the snowman. And, he was learning how to walk, and it says, put one foot in front of the, I literally, that helped me get through some of my worst days, was that little ditty that I learned when I was yay tall. And that little song put a smile on my face and helped me just put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking across the floor. And so that was my little meme that kind of helped me in some of my dark days. And that's why I also try to listen to some good comedy, because when they laugh, they say laughing is so important. And I have a hard time sometimes laughing at myself. So I'll listen to people and it's like, that's me. You're talking about me, and I can get a laugh out of it. So I kind of try and do that too. So try and incorporate things that'll make you smile, make you laugh, kind of lift your mood, consciously.
I can't believe
effort into it.
Yes, absolutely. I can't believe you have a kid song, because mine is A Little Blue Fish that reminds me to just keep swimming, and I sing that in my head over and over and over on a loop. So I love that. Like we a lot of times what happens, we find our comfort in our childhoods, and it's those memories that kind of pull us back. I love that so much. Robert, Dana, and Laura, thank you so much for joining us for this really important conversation. And like I said, I hope if we got one thing out of this, it's hope is there for us. We can make it through this. We will get through this. And I want to echo what Dana said. We're not alone. Clearly, we're all, maybe our struggles look different from each other, but we all have them. And feel free to reach out for help. I do want to mention really quickly before we go, on the front page of the 9 News website, we have an entire list of resources for anybody who just wants to scan over those for any help that they may be searching for. And like, I can't think it was Robert maybe, or maybe it was Laura that mentioned it earlier. Google's a great resource too. You can find a lot of help if you just go out there. That's where a lot of us turn to. So thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Thank you everybody who's been tuning in. Again, those resources posted on the 9 News website. And thank you to 9 News for giving us this platform. And again, this conversation is part of the COLab on Edge. Go check it out over on their website as well. And this conversation is far from over, my friends. We only got an hour today, but we're going to have to regroup and talk a little bit more, because I know we all have a lot more to say. So once again, thank you, friends. And that's going to wrap it. That's going to wrap it up for us now. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.